Hello and welcome to the Jackcast, your Swansea City podcast. I'm Matt Brocco and I'm joined as ever by Steve Carroll. Evening, Steve.
Evening.
Oh, it's been a few weeks since we've done this. We've got plenty to talk about. In the meantime, I've moved house. Steve, you decided to get a soak in Eastern Europe. So we've had to miss a couple of these and we're back. We've got plenty to talk about. In fact, the last time we did a podcast, the transfer window was still open, so that takes us back a couple of weeks now. I think the only player to come through the doors since that point was Pert Harris from Brentford, which we haven't really seen a great deal of yet, Steve. He was, in fact, Luke Williams spoke about him the other day and mentioned that he was more of a club signing than one of his own.
Yeah, not ideal, I suppose, really. It'll be interesting to see how much we see of him. I mean, he came on at West Brom late on, didn't he? So, we didn't see him against Norwich the other day. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out going forward. We'll see how fast Luke Williams is on him. But, that indicates to me that we might not see a huge amount of him. But time will tell. It's 3 or 4 months, obviously, now until the transfer window reopens. So he's not going to go anywhere in that time, is he?
Yeah, I think the thing of it is when we've had loan players come in the past and trying to club signings, trying to get over the line and stuff like that. Previous managers have been inclined. We've picked a particular. I'm thinking of Russell Martin in particular here, where he's had a very particular style that they need to meet, and you see a lot of the youngsters come in, Oko Flex and Finn Stevens and stuff, and given to him by the club and not utilised then. And I think it would be a big waste if this was another one of those. It's very early days, but history has told us that if the manager, who's quite particular in this style, hasn't earmarked a player as a potential star for the team, then he might not necessarily fit his starting 11.
Yeah, I think that's very true, isn't it? But I suppose the other way of looking at it is that it depends on if whoever's playing is doing well for us. Then obviously that makes it difficult then for other players to get into the side as well. So you do have that situation, but obviously competition for places is always a good thing. But like if Pert Harris gets a chance, then he needs to try and take it. I mean, you'd always want your manager to be open-minded, wouldn't you? In terms, they may have a view on a certain player, but then if they get a chance and do well, I mean, you can change your mind. I mean, we must have seen it loads of times down the years where somebody has looked done. I mean, I look back to Alan Tate being a good example, because I interviewed him in the summer for the fanzine, and he was telling me that Jacket had told him that Kenny Jacket, that is, of course, told him that he could leave. And then, because he saw him as a backup right back, and then he ended up in the team. And then they had a conversation later on in the season where Jacket turned to him and said, well, no matter what team I pick, you'll be in it. So it does show you that things can change, really, in that sense. It is always good if a manager can be open-minded if people get an opportunity and take it. So, but yeah. I mean,
well, there's nothing worse as a fan than when you see a player come in maybe for a midweek cup game or, rotation because your star man is tired or something like that, and they put in a top performance and they get left out the next week. That is, as a fan, that's so frustrating, because I question then what's going to motivate that player to keep giving his all if he knows he's out of the team regardless.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, competition for places is always a good thing. You don't want players complacency and thinking that no matter what happens, that they're going to keep their place, or like you say, in the other way of thinking, could have a storm here as a striker, could score a hat-trick, and thinking, well, the next game I'm going to be back out. You do need to try and give those players, and if they get an opportunity, that you have to try and keep them in the team then if you can. So. But look, there's a long season to go. I mean, you think of it so far, we haven't had many midweek games. The ones that we did have were cup games. So, we haven't really had the mad schedule yet. You think about it, usually this midweek we would have a league fixture, wouldn't we? But we haven't. They've obviously changed the schedule around a bit. We have got one coming up before the next international break. And then obviously I think as the season goes on, there'll be more. And when that happens, you do tend to see more changes anyway, don't you, really? So I think that could be an opportunity. But going out of the cup probably hasn't helped either, is it? Because that would have been a chance for squad players to take their minutes. But I'm sure we'll come on to that in a minute. And we can't really have any complaints about the fact we're out of the League Cup, can we?
Well, let's go on to that then, because that's the first game we haven't reviewed, going all the way back to the home game against Wickham on the midweek game, and hot favourites to progress. A weakened squad, or a little bit more of an experimental team, but plenty strong enough you'd have thought to progress, and such an uninspiring drab display, which kind of maybe took the wind out of the sails after what had been a bit more of a promising start to the season, and thought then, oh, well, actually, that's really knocked me back a bit now. And there was some poor performances on that night, wasn't there, if you cast your mind back?
Yeah, there was. I mean, nobody really came out of it with any credit, did they? I mean, you look at it and think that the squad players had a chance to impress, and we were just talking about this now, competition for places. Nobody staked a claim, did they? No. So that was really, really disappointing. I mean, I don't think we could complain about the fact that we lost, and it's obviously to a team as well from a lower division that I would say are probably not going to be one of the top sides. I mean, they're probably likely to be like a mid-table to top half side at best. So for us to be that poor in that game was really disappointing. And I mean, like I said, I think a lot of players let's use the Dutch left back as an example. I mean, we've not seen much of him, and I think we understood why based on that. I mean, there was one incident where he was caught completely out of position. He managed to get himself back in, but then the Wickham winger skipped past him like he wasn't there. I mean, it was awful, really. It was as if he wasn't on the pitch. So, yeah, I think a few of those players that may be frustrated they're not playing, they really didn't offer anything in that game, and it was a really disappointing night, wasn't it?
Really disappointing, and a thoroughly deserved defeat that was just always out of the cup, which, depending on how your Swansea City priorities are or your ambitions are this season, it depends how you felt about that going out early. But I think realistically, we are a bit short of a squad that would be in the mix at the top for the end of the season. As we saw by the end of the transfer window, we have players down, we are numbers down. And we've even had Luke Williams mentioning going into the free transfer market as a short-term solution to a problem if we are thin in areas, which when you've heard for a few years now, Steve, about learning lessons and about being better and not being caught in the same situation again, yada, yada, it's a little bit off-putting to find yourself the next transfer window come around. All this talk of we started planning as soon as the last window shut and nothing, and not the results, the number of results that you were hoping for. We were hoping for perhaps 2 or 3 more quality numbers in the door, and we just didn't manage to get those in. And I think we're probably not going to be able to go 46 games there and compete at the ferocity that we need to put ourselves in a chance. Do you think that's a fair statement?
Well, I think you've only got to look at when you gamble in situations like this, you might get away with it, right? But, I mean, you have to look at it and say that one game after the window had shut, we clearly didn't get away with it because Liam Cullen was injured, and then Zan Vapotnik ended up starting against West Brom but couldn't last the full game. So Ollie Cooper had to go up front. And now, I mean, luckily Cullen is back now, but, I mean, straight away there, you're looking at the situation and just thinking, well, you know, you've taken this risk, you've left us one short up front, and this is the result after one game. So, you know, I do think we've done better in the market than what we have than maybe the last couple of years. I mean, last year we just went ridiculous. There didn't seem to be any joined up thinking. It was just seemed to be signed people who were available. And the fact that you look at Saturday as an example now, I know Timon was ill, but the only starter from last summer's transfer window was Josh Key. It's quite embarrassing when you've signed well over double figures worth of players, and it shows how bad that it was. But I do think the approach and our business has been better this time. But as usual, we can't get it just as we needed to, and we have left ourselves a little bit short, haven't we? and up front there being a key example, really, isn't it? And I mean, you're looking at maybe centre half, and are we fully stocked there? I mean, and the other thing with centre half that we're going to have to discuss at some point is we don't have one contracted to us for next season, which is a big issue, isn't it? So, I do think things have improved, but lessons clearly haven't fully been learned, have they? I think that's another way of looking at it. And if we get a couple of injuries in the wrong areas or losses of form, then it's going to hurt us, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, you could get lucky. You could have. There's a couple of players I'm thinking now we can ill afford to lose for any length of time, and it's basically through the spine of that team, isn't it? I mean, we all want Vopotnik to be a goal machine. It's fair to say he's had a bit of a slow start to life, and Liam Cullen's perhaps epitomised Luke Williams's need for energy a lot more. He's given it a little bit more. You only have to watch the first half against Norwich to see what this team, and particularly the signings that Luke Williams identified the club have brought in, can offer, different from seasons gone by. I mean, the energy on that pitch. You look at, I mean, we'll talk about him at length later, but Franco, Eom, I think perhaps had his best game in terms of his showcasing his ability, a return to form, which led to the only goal, in fact. But and Cullen and Ollie Cooper, full of energy. So players like that seem to epitomise what this manager wants to do. And like you mentioned a little earlier on about facing the mistakes of not quite getting it right. Last season we went for just quantity, and as you say, only one player in the weekend's fixture that was signed last season, albeit there was obviously plenty of loans in there. But this season we targeted quality. We just couldn't quite get enough. Perhaps one or two more over the line would have made a huge difference. And that West Brom game, like you say, Ollie Cooper did finish up front. It's fair to say it's a bit of a game of two halves, this one, wasn't it? Because in the first half, you were thinking, when are we going to start playing? How we managed to keep it level? And obviously they scored on the brink of half time. And then, for me at least, in the second half, a far brighter showing, but not enough to get the equaliser.
Yeah, I mean the first half was shocking, wasn't it? We can't describe it any other way. It felt as if we were a lower league team playing a good side in the FA Cup. I mean, we just couldn't seem to keep hold of the ball. We could have been 2 down in the first 5 minutes. There were some really poor mistakes. I remember Cabango clearing it out in the touch a couple of times. I think Vigouroux was quite often trying to pick out Ronaldo, and the left back was winning it in the air every time. I mean, Vigouroux himself obviously made that mistake where, I can't remember who he passed it to now, but to be fair, he's made a good save to sort of redeem it. But, I mean, we were just really, really poor. I think the stats at half-time was something like 11 shots to 1. And I remember thinking, as it got towards half-time, like, if we get in 0-0 here, we don't know how lucky we are, because we've been completely bossed here, and we've made so many big mistakes. But obviously then, in the end, justice was done, and we did end up conceding. So, look, we did play better after the break. I wouldn't dispute that, but I think, did we play well enough to get anything overall? I think the answer would have to be no, wouldn't it? Because of how bad we were in the first half. I think the second was more even, really, wasn't it?
We should have been maybe like a 3-1, and they went 3-0 up at half time, and we probably grabbed one back in the second half, and that would have probably reflected the game. But we certainly improved, Steve.
Oh, we did, yeah. I mean, the bar was very low, so I'm reluctant to give too much credit for an improvement. But yes, it was better. We did compete better. We had a couple of chances. I mean, I felt we could have had a penalty, although when you look at the replay, maybe the ref did get it right, although at the time I was screaming at him from the stand. But yeah, I mean, they did have a couple of chances as well then, didn't they? So, look, I think overall, we can't complain. The better side did end up winning. I did feel better coming out of there than I thought I would. Certainly way better than half time, so I will say that much for it. There was, that reaction, but I mean, if we play like we did in the first half, we're not going to get results against hardly anybody, I wouldn't have thought, because it was it was just really poor, really concerning, because you look at the Cardiff game. I mean, we felt there was some frustration there where, we didn't put them to the sword, and we should have done. And obviously we talked about Wickham, which was really poor. And then after that first half at West Brom, I was thinking, what the hell are we doing? But luckily then we did see a bit of an improvement, which was something. I still don't think overall it was acceptable what happened up there. I mean, to lose is fair, but I mean, to have been outplayed like that in the first half, just, I can't be dealing with that if I'm honest. But yeah, look, we did at least come out and compete, which is a bare minimum. So that was a plus point. But I won't lie, after that game, I was quite happy to have an international break.
Yeah, because the murmurings were starting, weren't they? Because, like you say, a few games without a positive result, the Shock Cup exit, the manner of the performances as well. We hear all sorts. I know it always comes out when things aren't necessarily going well, and maybe there was a timeline set that Luke Williams had to start improving results by, etc. And it all seemed very sudden to creep up on it like that. I mean, we've already seen a number of high-profile departures this season, some quite shocking ones as well. So to see Luke Williams mentioned in that was a bit of a shock. But then you just don't know. You don't know how much of it is rumour mill stuff and how much of it is substantially true. But there was murmurs of discontent, wasn't there? I mean, players got booed off against Wickham. But I mean, let's be honest, the performance was shocking. Again, to me, the difference it makes when Franco is on the pitch is night and day. I'm going to save that for the last bit of the show, because we'll talk about the international break now and Craig Bellamy's start as Wales manager. Steve, I don't think there's anyone listening to this who's going to be happier than you that we're not talking about Rob Page's Wales anymore. A new era, a new dawn, and the promise of some exciting, attacking, possession-based football under a manager who knows what he wants with this Wales team, and there's not many more passionate to wear the Wales shirt than Craig Bellamy. So we hope that Wales have got the right man in charge.
Yeah, I mean, I'm never going to have to hear the word transition ever again. We thank God for that. So, it was quite a positive couple of games for Wales, really, wasn't it? I mean, you're never entirely sure what to expect from a new manager. I mean, given the Bellamy had worked with Vincent Kompany and who was heavily influenced by Pep Guardiola, the expectation was always going to be on a possession-based game. And, what we saw was the team taking a lot of risks, really, in the Turkey game. I mean, with playing out, I mean, it could have backfired a couple of times, but I was quite impressed with how brave we were. And you could see straight away that the manager had an impact in terms of, style of play. So, a little disappointed that we didn't win, because I think we were the better side. But, at the end of the day, there were plenty of positives, really. It was a far more enjoyable game than a lot of the ones have been under Page. And I think it was a case of as well that you're excited for what's to come. Whereas I think previously it was like, God, how much worse is this going to get, really? So, yeah, I think there's positive signs to be had. I mean, I think the away game, which was a little bit ridiculous, really, given the conditions, it's a bit harder to, judge that one after the Turkey game in terms of, I think it was very much a bit of a game in isolation because the conditions were so crazy. And what we saw there was quite an open game. And I'm actually quite surprised the pitch hacked it, because I did travel over there. And it started raining about 2 p.m. We were looking at the forecast and it wasn't going to stop. And I wasn't convinced that pitch was going to hack it. Obviously, the Montenegro have never played at this ground before, a full international. It hadn't rained apparently for 4 months, which is just unbelievable and typical for Wales, isn't it? And I wasn't convinced the pitch would hack it. You never know what the conditions are like in other countries with drainage and stuff like that. But to be fair, considering the rain it had, the pitch did hold up quite well. So, but it was a bit of a crazy game, wasn't it? I can't ever remember being at a game where there's been 2 goals for the same side so early on. Obviously the second goal in particular was a screamer, really, wasn't it? So, yeah, I mean, there could have been more goals at both ends, I would say, but a really good win. Obviously, that's the first time Wales have won away from home against a former Yugoslav country. So it's a bit of a milestone and some history there. And I think to get 4 points from the first two games is really encouraging, and I think people can be positive about the future, really. So it just feels like the jobs for the boys' era is over. I mean, Bellamy as a first-time manager obviously has brought some different staff in, which I felt that we needed, really. I mean, I've always been critical of Page's staff. I mean, people that have taken Chesterfield into the conference and stuff like that. I mean, we've got to be aiming higher than that, but I think he's brought in people that he can trust, and it feels like a new era and one that we can be positive about, really. I don't know what you think.
Yeah, I think, watching it felt like Wales perhaps lack what they would do with a Craig Bellamy, in fact, up front. Someone who would lead that line has got an eye for goal, and really the difference between having that sort of player and not at international level, where games are so often quite cagey, tight, and decided by the odd goal, especially when it comes to qualifying and stuff. It can make a massive difference, and hopefully there's someone in the wings somewhere, hoping to break through and make that impact, because they've beaten Turkey with it, and perhaps had a more comfortable evening against Montenegro, albeit in horrendous conditions. But how important, in your mind, and how positive is it that Harry Wilson has kind of grown into this mold that's been set for him, as you are going to be taking this Wales team forward. You have the ability. You've always shown it in flashes, but we need it consistently. And it does seem now that coming international break, Harry Wilson is the man to really give Wales, whether it be with a brilliant pass, a cross, or a goal like it was the other day. He seems to be the man that Wales turn to for that moment of brilliance and magic.
Yeah, it does seem as if, doesn't it? He could, attacking wise, he maybe is the most important player now, which is quite interesting, because you would think, really, based on who he plays for, that it would be Brennan Johnson, but it's not really happened for him yet, is it? And if I'm honest with you, I think if everybody's fit, there's a case to say Brennan Johnson shouldn't start, which is quite surprising when you consider that he's playing. There's little doubt that of all the players that we've got, he's playing for the best team. So it is. That's interesting in itself. But yeah, Wilson.
He's got a few years on his side, doesn't he, Johnson, to still grow.
He has, but he's had quite a lot of caps now, and it feels as if Wales haven't been able to get the best out of him, really. So, hopefully at some point we will be able to. But I mean, I do agree with you on Wilson. It does. He was very influential in a victory over Croatia a year ago. Obviously he's done very well in the last couple of games as well. So I do think now he is quite a key player, really. And, there is good competition for places, I think, in the forward positions, but I think you'd have to say that he in particular does have to start. So that says a lot, really. But, Wilson he's doing well. And we haven't got a huge amount of players that are regulars in the Prem, really, have we? So, he is one that is playing for a Premier League side. So, maybe we shouldn't be as maybe I shouldn't be as shocked that he's become as influential. But either way, it is good. And the fact is, since Gareth Bale has retired, there is a big void, isn't it? Because we do have some other good players, but I mean, Bale was you can say once in a generation player. I think he's a once in a century player, to be honest with you, like for a country like ours, because he was that influential, and he could just dig you out of so many situations, all different types of goals, and also the leadership that would come with it as well. So it's obviously going to be a big loss, but I guess the goals and the other aspects of play have to be shared around. But Wilson's probably having the biggest individual influence at the moment.
Yeah, and I feel like that's what I think he's done so well. He's consistently inconsistent, wasn't he, Wilson? You could see what he could do. I remember when he spent the year on a Cardiff, and there was fears in the Swansea camp, in the fan base, that he'd be huge for them and he'd be able to do massive things for them. But yeah, the odd free kick screamer aside, he was so inconsistent and drifted out of games so much that he really didn't have the impact that I expected him to have when he was at Cardiff. And I feel like that is an area of his game which we always knew he had the talent. One of the sweetest strikers of a dead ball that you could see. So to bring it out consistently was the magic, and yeah, it's taken him a few years to get there, but now we're really starting to see Harry Wilson in a Wales shirt being the main man, and he's taken the mantle and he's running with it at the moment. And long may that continue, because if there's anyone who you could fancy just hitting a bouncing ball 25 yards out and finding the absolute top corner postage stamp, it's that man, like he did against Montenegro. So he could be central to Craig Bellamy's success as Wales manager, because he really is growing into it at the moment. So a positive break for you, Steve, and all in all, a trip worth making out to Eastern Europe.
Yeah, I think so. It was. It was pretty good. It was actually quite a nice place. If we went down to Budva and places like that on the coast, I must admit, Podgorica itself was a little bit dull. But it was, the match day wasn't the best, I must admit, because we had to travel by bus, crawling up the mountain roads to Nixit from Podgorica, and the police escort was slower than for a South Wales derby. So everyone, I'm sure, can relate to how painful that can be. And crap weather, and quite a bit of it must have been a 6 or 7 hour round trip if you include the game and how slow we were going, and the fact that they held us back a little bit after the game. So a long night, but when you get a win and 2 goals early on like that, I guess it does end up being worthwhile in the end. But not a night I'll forget in a hurry, I don't think.
Yeah, I bet. But you came back safe and well, ready to get back to club football, Steve. And what a contrast. A sunny Swansea to see, to welcome Norwich to town, and sure you welcomed a bit of dry weather, and to see what was probably the best 45 minutes we've seen under Luke Williams. Is that a big stretch? I think for me, it was, that first half in particular was a real joy.
It's certainly one of, I would say. It was, I think we were all a bit surprised by how well we played and how intense the intensity that we had. And, you could say we were a little bit lucky maybe with the goal that we got. But, when you put, some quick passing together and you're putting a good ball low on the floor across the box, then, you are asking questions, and they can lead to mistakes. So I think that's something we certainly need to carry on with. We saw a few good balls, didn't we, low across the box, but then unfortunately we did revert to type later on with some ones in the air where it really shouldn't be rocket science that Liam Cullen is not going to win those ones. So we need to try and stick with those lower crosses across the box, because they can wreak havoc. But like you say, Franco was everywhere, wasn't he? Seemed to be. I think that was certainly his best half in a Swan shirt. So there was a lot of positives, really, weren't there, from the first half. And the other thing was we were playing quite a good side. I wasn't sure what to expect from Norwich, because they've lost their manager, the parachute payments have gone. I was thinking maybe a bit of a transitional time for them, but they were quite a good side, I thought. So. We did hold our own against them, so it was encouraging, and certainly the most encouraging of the season, I would say, by quite a distance.
I think what I liked about it was the energy going forward. I think it's one of the times where I looked at, one of the few times I've looked at that and thought, no, that's what he wants to see. That's what Luke Williams wants to see, because I think the image of his Swansea City was on show in that first half. You looked at Cullen, Cooper, Eom, Franco, Ronald, that, and Grimes next to Franco, and you had energy, you had desire to win the ball back the moment we lost it. The harry and the pressing didn't give Norwich a second on the ball, and this is what I come back to, and I'm going to wax lyrical about him, but Franco is already, for me, the most important player that we need to keep fit, because he is night and day. And there's a couple of players in this team that I really do love, and I think maybe in some quarters are underrated because of what they offer. I know I've spoken at length about Harry Darling before, but Franco now for this team is to me the most important player because he simply makes us tick. He's like a Joe Allen and Leon Britton kind of. He wins the ball and Harry's like Britton did, but then he can move so elegantly through the players, through the lines, like Joe Allen did in his youth and stuff. So he really does. And in that first half, he was a simply worth the admission price alone. I think he was really quality performance from him, and really set the tone for how we were going to play because Norwich couldn't get near him, and he could very much get near Norwich, and he fed some brilliant balls out wide, whether it be one side to Eom or the other side to Ronald, and got us up the pitch quickly. And it really caught Norwich on the hop a few times. And that to me is an anchor of the team where we can build around. But wow, how important he has become already in my eyes.
Yeah, it feels like that, doesn't it? And I mean, it's the fact then that someone like Fulton is getting phased out because of it, which is a good thing because, Fulton doesn't get involved enough and doesn't offer anywhere near what Franco can. So the good thing is there as well. You think Franco with Grimes is now becoming quite a good partnership already, isn't it? So that can only be a good thing because we've got to be realistic as well. We can't rely on Joe Allen. Look, he will be able to do a job for us without a doubt when he's fit, but he hasn't been able to keep to be available enough for us since he's come back, really, has he? So Grimes, I think, has needed somebody alongside him, and Franco is looking like a really good signing so far, isn't he? Certainly the best one of the bunch from the summer, and it's great work by the recruitment team, and it does. This signing like him now is what gives me that confidence that things have at least improved. I know I've said that we are a little bit short in a couple of positions, but I do feel as if we are a bit more on the right track at least. So that's a good thing, and Franco has starred for us really so far, isn't he? And he was excellent the other day. So it's we should be encouraged by that. That's got to be it's got to be a good thing for us going forward, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think those players obviously identified, shown to Luke Williams. Yes, go and get them. Like Franco signed on 4-year deals. Ronald signed last January, and having players like that, which you think, I can remember having this conversation with you about a year ago and saying the worrying thing is, as a club that needs to sell and reinvest in order to survive, we're really, really running low on assets. And we were, and that's thankfully a position which I don't think we're in right now. I think we've now got ourselves 4, maybe 5 players who we would sell tomorrow for a substantial profit on what we paid for them. And that's what we have. That's got to be our trading model. It is our trading model, but we've got to do it right. And we've got to do it savvy because everyone's trying to do the same thing, buy low and sell high. But we need to be a step ahead, use the relaxation in the work permit laws and make sure that our scouts are a bit better than everyone else at picking out talent. And of course, having that style of play helps us find that corner of the market, that niche, because maybe Franco wouldn't suit everyone because they would be looking for a bit more of a hard man, big centre midfielder who would impose himself on the game like physically, and Franco for us is perfect. So I think in that sense it's about having an idea of what you're looking for, having a style of play and going out there and targeting that skill set, isn't it? And something we used to do, Steve, and it's something I hope we return to.
Yes, definitely. And like you say, we really didn't have many assets this time last year. Now I think at this stage, I mean, obviously we've got to give people time, and we also don't want to lose players immediately either. But I mean, there's certainly positive signs that we do now have assets, or that we looking ahead rather to the summer, really, aren't we? Whereas at that point, will we have 1 or 2 that we can sell if we need to? And I think there's certainly signs that we will. Whereas we all felt really, I think, didn't we, that summer just gone, there weren't going to be many at all, and it sort of proven to be the case, really, wasn't it? So, it's got to be a good thing. It's certainly progress. We seem to have learned one or two lessons at least, don't we?
Yeah, very much so, and hopefully that continues into the January transfer window and beyond. But getting the balance right is key, making sure you can't just have one quality player and dross in behind them as backups, because you're not going to be able to go through a 50-game season as it is nowadays with just your starting 11. You need a squad these days, and you need to be able to utilise that in order to change a game. And if you can't, you can bet your opposition will. So we need to be there on that front, and it's something it's still a work in progress. First half was all about dazzling, exciting attacking play, Steve. The second half asked different questions of the Swansea City team and asked them about their steel and their resolve. And there were times in that where you were biting the quicks of your fingers away and really trying to watch the game through those fingers. But stay strong they did, and battle for everything they did against a Norwich team that seemed to throw everything but the kitchen sink to try and get that equaliser.
Yeah, there were definitely some warrior moments, weren't there? And we did really well to see it out. I mean, I think everyone played their part. I mean, the stand-up moment really was the Ben Cabango tackle, wasn't it? Last ditch, whereas if he gets it wrong, then could have been a penalty and a red. But to be fair, he got it spot on, didn't he? So, you look at that being a particular key moment. I mean, Ronaldo really blew it for us, didn't he? I mean, I think he was, he shouldn't have played a pass that was that risky that late in the game. I mean, I think in his defence, the sun was in his eyes, but so he probably didn't see the Norwich striker. But at the same time, you can't be taking that level of risk. I mean, it just if that had cost us the win, it would have been a gutter, wouldn't it? It would have just felt, ridiculous, really, after all the effort that we'd put in. But look, we dug in. We showed, a bit of the ugly side of the game, which you do need to show on certain occasions, without a doubt. And it was a well-earned win, wasn't it? I mean, but there is one other point I would like to make as well. Why was there so many minutes of added time? I can't grasp that one. I think was it 7 minutes? I remember thinking at the time, it's like there's been no real incidents. Yeah, there've been a few subs, but that doesn't warrant 7 minutes. I mean, when 7 went up, I couldn't believe it. I was livid. The main thing is it didn't cost us, but yeah, I found that to be quite baffling, really, and not what we needed or deserved. But look, we saw it out, didn't we? And it's a really good win. I think we'll look back at that at the end of the season and think that was, one of our best wins, really, won't we?
Yeah, I think, I think in the manner of which it was achieved as well. I wasn't convinced we'd be able to keep them out, and so I was pleasantly surprised that happened in the end. And to be honest with you, you don't often get games that are quite as stark. You get moments, and there's always going to be moments for teams in games, but to have such a stark contrast from what was a dazzling first half display to a gritty, ugly second half dogged performance, I think is probably a few ways to describe it, was quite an extreme, wasn't it? But we answered both calls. And yeah, I would have liked to see us score another goal in that first half, or maybe give ourselves a little bit of a breathing space. And the goal we did score was a bit of a freak on goal, wasn't it? But we were asking the right questions, and we were putting those situations onto Norwich in the first half where that's what you want to see, don't you? You want to see Ronaldo go at his man time. And you know what? Mention for Ronaldo as well. I know he'll get criticism for that blind back pass, and it almost cost us the win. And yeah, correct to point out. But I love him. I think he's quality. The amount of times, I do see people say, and rightly so, he hasn't got a final ball on him. And it's an accurate observation. But there's absolutely no chance we got any hope of keeping that man if he can put a cross in, because he's just he's got so much energy, enthusiasm, and drive. And I saw a stat earlier on, I think it was, that nobody in the top 4 divisions in the English game has won more duels this season than Ronaldo, which says it all, really, because he constantly goes into those battles with the fullback and he constantly wins them. So it's a testament to his work rate. He's not a one-trick pony. He's not someone who will show you it for 20 minutes like we've had in players in the past and go missing for 70. You can give it to him any point in that game and he'll have one thing on his mind: beat his man. And it does really speak to him. When he's spoken about it before as well, about where he's come from in a footballing sense and even in a upbringing sense, he really shows that hunger and desire to better himself and improve week on week. And you really can see he gives his all up there.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, Ronaldo, I think, can be frustrating on occasions. He's definitely got to work on his final ball, but it's the fact that he stretches teams, isn't it? And I mean, we'd been moaned, didn't we, I think last season, and probably under Russell Martin as well, the fact that there's such a slow and pedestrian and predictable team. I mean, you've got to have some sort of pace in your team, and you know, he has made that difference, hasn't he? I mean, look at the Cardiff game where, yeah, his final ball was shocking, but he was stretching them all the time at least. So he is a key player for us in that sense, really. And look, there's no doubt he has to play. I mean, he can really make the difference for us, and he often has, even if, you know, that final ball does seem to still be a bit of a weakness. But yeah, look, he asks questions. He's a general pain in the backside. So it's, yeah, we've got to have him in the team, haven't we? Yeah,
and I think there's a few players there, and he's one of the ones when they talk about creating assets. I think he'll be a fan's favourite just because, and I hope no one ever coaches it out of him, you know, to, you know, slow the game down or come inside. That raw energy, enthusiasm and pace at any point in the game terrifies defenders because it just does not give them a break. So long may that continue. And I guess, and we mentioned briefly earlier on, and worth mentioning again, a good performance, a solid performance by Ollie Cooper, perhaps one of his best in a couple of years, Steve. He was energetic, he was enthusiastic, he got about, he played some lovely football. And it's nice to see him back in and looking like he's back in form again.
Yeah, absolutely. It's you know, you think of Ollie Cooper, where, you know, when he first came into the side was full of energy and, you know, was a good player for us, really. But then you think at the end of Russell Martin's time, he seemed to lose his place in the side, and then last season really didn't go well for him at all. There weren't many stand-up moments. I know he came on at Plymouth and got a nice goal, but it almost felt last season it's a bit of a wasted year for him. And I think it would have been better with hindsight, if he'd gone out on loan somewhere, because there were so many players here. I mean, that didn't help him either. But yeah, I mean, he didn't start on the opening day, and I think things were looking ominous there. But look, he's managed to regain his place, and yeah, it's looking encouraging. And to be fair to him as well, thought he did quite well for Wales in Montenegro. So things are looking good for Ollie Cooper at the moment, and there can be little doubt that he deserves to be in the side. And look, I suppose he's an example of what I was saying earlier, where, you know, someone has been given the chance and has taken it, and he deserves to stay in now, doesn't he? So yeah, it's I'm really encouraged about him at the moment. It's that's a big plus point for us.
He does benefit from us losing a few players in that position. You know, Jai Patino, Pato, just to name a couple. Probably another one in there as well. But yeah, you know, he's got an opportunity. There's a bit more breathing space for him to get game time, and he needs to keep taking those opportunities and keep growing. And you know, that is bright for us. You mentioned the defence. We've mentioned how resolute they were and how much they stood up to the questions. I talk about Darlin every week, so I'll give it a week off this week. Cabango was really, really positive. I'm not been on this podcast before criticising Cabango, so it's only fair that I say that he was the game changer in that one, in terms of his last minute challenge, some of his challenges, not just the standard one, but other ones as well, where he got it before it became a gilt-edged chance. So he was a great positive. And the final one I want to mention is the goalkeeper that came in the summer, Steve Vigaroo. We didn't know what to expect. There was uneasy, maybe as goal. We've been in situations where we've had unbelievable goalkeepers for so many years. We've also had a couple of seasons of really ropey goalkeepers. We weren't sure which one this was going to go, and after an opening day, bit of I don't know, indecision or maybe a bit of flamboyancy against Middlesbrough away, you thought, oh God, have we signed here? But he's really, really proven at the moment to be a shrewd sign-in for us.
Yeah, I'm encouraged with Vigaroo. I think his passing's pretty good on the whole. Yeah, he's given it away a couple of times, but I mean, nobody keeps the ball every single time they try to play a pass today. So and he has made some big saves for us, as he did the other day. So look, I think, considering we've only paid about 100 grand for him, and obviously it was a very key position given that we lost Carl Rushworth, that I think Williams has done really well with that. Obviously it's a player that he knows because he had him previously at Swindon, and I think Vigaroo's made a good start for us, really. So it's I'm really happy with him, and like I say, we've already talked up Franco as being a good signing, and I think it's similar really with Vigaroo, isn't it? So they're two big plus points for us, new additions that have come in and made the difference, and that's obviously what we really needed, wasn't it? So hopefully he'll just continue to get better.
Yeah, exactly, and a very welcome 3 points. If one of those ones where you wouldn't necessarily banking on it, but you look at the home form this season. If we just don't include the Wickham game, what's that? 7 points from 3.
I mean, how long did it take us to get 7? Well,
we talked about this. We talked about this.
It wasn't as bad as you think, because we did win 2 games, didn't we, at the end of September and early October. But remember, after that, we didn't have another home win until, it was ages, wasn't it? And our home record in general last year was crap. So
yeah,
getting 2 wins early on is encouraging, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's the third game is Derby. I think everything goes out the window there, doesn't it? So you can't necessarily take that as anything more than a Derby game would be normally taken. So it's positive. We did speak at the start of the season, or before a ball was kicked, even about the importance of righting those wrongs from last season and making sure the home form was fixed. So it's been a positive start there, Steve. And now it's really about trying to get the away form up on the road and making sure that we can start picking up some vital points on the road. And, well, why not start Saturday? You surprised me with a stat before we started recording. And, I'll leave you introduce it, because it's quite a pearler.
Yeah, so we haven't lost to Coventry since 1981, 17 games. And, of course, the mad thing is that I think last year we equalised up there in the last minute. And the year before we were 3-0 down and come back to 3-3. So it's, it's a crazy stat, really, that it's been that long since we've lost them. There's been quite a few draws in there. I always remember the first couple of times you played him in my lifetime. Martinez was in charge, and it was in that run of 8 games in a row, the Football League record. But, excuse me, we played him a lot of times since then, never lost. So we're
going to lose on Saturday now we've said that.
Well, look, at some point they are inevitably going to beat us, aren't they? But let's hope it's not yet. Yeah,
well, they've had a so-so start of the season. They're sitting a few places below us with a win and 2 draws so far. But generally speaking, expected to have a sort of top half pushing for the playoff kind of. That's the vibe I get from the Coventry camp. Do you agree with that? Is that your expectations for them?
Yeah, you think so, wouldn't you? I mean, they've had. I was been keeping an eye on their score tonight because they've been playing Spurs, haven't they, in the cup, and they were winning, and it's just gone drastically wrong. They've conceded in the 88th and 90+2 to end up losing that. So it's a bit of a kick in the guts for them. I'm sure they'll be disappointed with that. But in general, I think the fact they played midweek probably isn't a bad thing for us either. But I think Coventry obviously were unlucky the year before, lost a shootout, didn't they, to get into the Prem, and obviously since then, last year finished top half again, another good season. Even though they lost Hamer to Sheffield United, they lost Gyökeres, of course, to Sporting Lisbon, and they were very, very unlucky not to make the FA Cup final, weren't they? I mean, that goal that got chalked off looked, suspiciously like a goal to me, but it didn't get given. And obviously then it went to a shootout, didn't it? But Coventry did remarkably well, through that cup run as well. So, look, it's a club that's on the up really after, a real miserable few years. So, good for them. But hopefully, it doesn't go too well for them on Saturday. And I think we, having lost our first 2 away games, it would be nice to try and get something up there, really, when they wouldn't want it to make it 3 defeats in a row away from home and just be relying on our home form for results. So, hopefully we can get a result up there now at the weekend.
Yeah, Mark Robbins has done a great job there, hasn't he? And consistently getting better and better with them. So it's credit to them for that. They will want to kick back into winning form, if you like, in the Championship. It has been nearly a month since they won in the Championship, so it will be interesting to see whether tonight's result, albeit last 2 late conceded goals, how much that would be a gutter for them, and would they carry that hangover into the weekend, like you said, a midweek fixture that we don't have to contend with.
Yeah, I think if they'd have won tonight, you'd have thought that would be an extra spring in their step. Obviously, it would have been a big scalp to have knocked Spurs out of the cup. But I mean, the way that it's ended now is a real gutter, isn't it? You'd be really disappointed, I think, as a Coventry fan. I think obviously if it had been an equaliser, it still would have gone to a penalty shootout, wouldn't it? But they're bound to be really disappointed by that, aren't they? And hopefully we can take advantage of it. But yeah, I think Coventry are, they're a decent team, and look, at some point they could have beat us. I mean, it is a mad start. They do exist, and I mean, the other thing we talked about before the show was obviously we've got one, and it's Bournemouth, isn't it? They've been a pain in the arse for us, haven't they, over the last few years? And it does feel like nearly every team has got a bogey somewhere along the line, and we seem to be theirs, don't we? So hopefully it can continue, and fingers crossed we'll take a decent little following up there as well. It's not one of the furthest trips of the season, is it? So hopefully we'll get some decent backing for the boys, and that will help us to get a result as well. Yeah,
I don't see any reason why that starting 11 changes. I wouldn't want us to suddenly put someone more defensive on there and try and batten down the hatches. It's not a style of play I like to see us adopt, and it's not a style of play we're particularly good at either. I'd say start the same 11 that started against Norwich.
Yeah, I don't see us making a change, and I don't really see a need for us to make a change. I mean, to be fair, Kyle Norton came in and did well. That was there was a question mark over that, really, wasn't it? But he did well, and if he kept his place, I wouldn't see that as the end of the world either. But I suppose that, I think, Timon coming back in would be the only realistic possible change, really, wouldn't it? And if he did, then I would understand that as well.
Yeah. How do you see this going on the weekend then?
I don't know. Like I said, they're going to beat us at some point, aren't they? But I'm going to, I think we've got a decent chance of getting a draw up there. I mean, it's a game that could go either way, is what I feel like. But look, I'd be really pleased to come away with something on the board. I think that would be a positive step for us, and hopefully we want to see positive signs performance-wise as well, really, don't we? I mean, if we see a positive performance and it still ends in a loss, then I could see the plus points in that as well. Really, what we don't want is to have neither, isn't it? We want a poor performance and a poor result. So hopefully we can do something, and it gives us a bit more confidence then for the home game with Bristol City the week after.
he's got to lay down the gauntlet now, isn't he? He's got to issue the challenge to the players to say, we can play like that, then we can play like that anywhere, and we should aim to reach those levels, those energy levels and those performance levels. So it's not an exact science, otherwise everyone will be doing it, but it's the demands that we need to make of those players to say we can run those yards, and the opposition will struggle wherever we're playing. If we're playing with that energy and we're harassing with a high press and winning the ball really quickly after losing it, then no one's going to enjoy playing against that. So there's the challenge for the players now to go out and repeat that first half of Norwich everywhere, really, and show the same resolve as we did in the second half if we need to. Let's finish the podcast. I tell you what, by the way, if we do go up there and bring home a win, it started from what has been a decent start to the season to what would end up being considerably a very good start to the season, Steve, because we've had some tricky fixtures in the opening 5-6 games, and if we could end it with 10 points after 6, I think we'd all say that's a great return.
Yeah, I think the two away games that we have lost so far, I mean, I can't say I'm particularly shocked at that one, really. Middlesbrough, we were still quite short of players at that point, and I do think they are a decent team. And, West Brom undoubtedly are a good side as well. So, not a particular shock. I would say that they've not gone the way that we were hoping that they would. But, I think the home, I think certainly Preston and Cardiff, they were favourable fixtures, really. I think Norwich is a bit tougher, but yeah, I mean, if we were to get a win, it would be considered a really good start to the season. And then you're going into a home game against a team that have not had a great start either in Bristol City. So, look, I think, we can only take it one game at a time, but I think the points tally that we've got now, 7 from 5, probably would have taken that at the start. But obviously we would have preferred to have had 3 off Cardiff, but it is what it is.
It is. But before we go, just leave us with that nugget of positivity that I ask you for every podcast, just to leave the fans with a ray of sunshine going into the next game.
So the last game was probably the best that we've played so far. Like I said, 17 games and over 40 years since losing to Coventry. So, yeah, there's reasons to be positive. And, of course, the club that we don't like are bottom of the league.
All right, then. Where are they? Oh, yeah. Sorry, I hadn't scrolled far enough down to see Cardiff. I didn't realise they went down that low.
They're almost now the third best team in Wales, because Wrexham are only 2 places below them, technically. Yeah.
Well, it'd be interesting to see Cardiff v Wrexham tomorrow, if that fixture were to happen. I know who I'd fancy to take the points and the result in that game. Yeah, right down there, look. I didn't know it went down that low. Never mind. Thanks for that, Steve, and thanks for listening. And join us again next time. We'll be reviewing the Coventry game. Hopefully another positive result and positive performance, as Steve said. Early days in the season, it's important to get the performances right to set the mark for this season. So hopefully we'll get that and a nice result to go with it, and we can be sitting here next week looking at what has been a very good start to the season. But for myself and Steve, thank you for listening. Bye bye.